I'm Dr. Amy Imms from the Burnout Project, and I want to talk about stress and how it stays under the radar and what we can do about it. Stress is something we all feel, and it's something that we probably just accept as being a normal part of life. In fact, as stress becomes more an everyday part of our life, then we don't notice it as much anymore. And so it has to reach a higher and higher threshold so that we actually consciously detect it and feel that stress. But all that underlying stress that slips by unnoticed is still affecting us. So it still activates our stress pathways. Our amygdala, the fear center in our brain, sends a message to the hypothalamus, and that tells our adrenal glands to release hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. These hormones travel around the body, trying to prepare us for fighting that threat. So if you imagine that there's a lion coming at you, what's important in that moment? It doesn't really matter so much whether we're digesting that last meal we ate or trying to maintain our immune system for the next bacteria we come across. What matters right then is actually fighting that threat. So either staying to battle this lion or running away from it. So we want extra blood going to our brain so we can think clearly and have fast reactions. We want extra blood going to our muscles so that we can run really fast. We want a nice big hit of sugar in our body, giving us that energy that we need to have that fast response. You want to breathe and pump blood around your body faster so that you can be delivering that oxygen wherever it's needed. So that's what those stress hormones do, is they prepare you for this threat. And this is what happens when you get stressed in daily life. So your body doesn't know whether you're stressed about a speech you're about to give or a meeting you're about to go to or a deadline that you have coming up, or whether it's actually immediate physical danger like a lion or something like that. So your body reacts in the same way regardless. And this response is obviously really helpful if you are in danger, but it's designed to be a short-term response. So it's supposed to help you deal with that one threat, and then that stress response is meant to be switched off, and it's meant to allow what we call the tend and befriend system to be activated. So that's the state that helps us to communicate really well and to connect emotionally with people. It's when our body goes through its healing processes and we digest our food and we maintain our immune system. And so that's the state that we're meant to be in most of the time, but we're not. I personally remember only too well that feeling of high daily stress 4 years ago. I was working in a busy medical practice and I had 4 young children, and I was trying to study for some really big exams. And that study in particular was just really hard to fit in on top of everything else. My kids woke really early and the toddler didn't go to sleep till really late. So I would set my alarm at 4 o'clock in the morning to get up and study before they woke up. The problem is the kids didn't sleep very well, so most mornings I would end up pressing snooze over and over until I had to get up and get ready for work. So then in my tired state, I'd be getting the kids ready and getting them dressed and resolving the arguments and dealing with all the meltdowns, and then I'd finally rush out of the house, usually running a little bit late, and then arrive to work, and I'd have lots of patients to see, emergencies coming up, lots of paperwork to do, and I would enjoy it. You know, seeing patients was a really rewarding part of my job, but it was also emotionally and mentally exhausting. And I'd get to the end of the day and realize that yet again, I'd forgotten to eat my lunch, and I'd stay back an hour or two just to complete all the paperwork from that day. When the day finally ended, I'd rush home and try to see my kids before they were back to bed again, dealing with more meltdowns as they headed off to bed. And as I walked in the door, I would see this chaos and clutter everywhere. And that would overwhelm me again. And I'd think, how am I ever going to get a chance to actually deal with all this and do more than just that basic tidying every day? And that just added to that stress that I felt. So I'd finally get the kids to bed quite late at night. And I'd look at those textbooks again and decide, no, I'm too tired. And I'd set the alarm for 4 a.m., thinking that maybe it would actually work that time. And so the cycle went on and on. And it wasn't just kids and work that felt overwhelming and that I felt like I wasn't managing very well. I also felt like I was always apologizing to my friends that I hadn't caught up with them again, other commitments that I felt like I was late with again. And I just wanted to press a pause button somewhere and have a couple of weeks to just kind of catch up a little bit and get on top of things, and maybe even just have a chance to sit and relax. Now, I know we're all living unique experiences, but I'm sure you can relate to at least some parts of my story. And the question is, what can we do about it? Do we have to just accept that this is part of life? What we want to be doing is taking actions which help us to switch off that stress response and activate that tend and befriend response. And so there are a few different areas of life that we can look at to achieve that. The first one is to look at logistical things. So, what is our workload like? And is it a reasonable workload? What are our schedules like? How do we actually structure our day and organize things so that they work well? And are there things in our schedules that don't need to be there, that aren't absolutely essential? And are there things that we can delegate? Can we take some of that responsibility off ourselves and pass that on to somebody else, even if it's just temporary? The second area is psychological things. So in terms of switching off that stress response, things like mindfulness can be really effective. And mindfulness is basically just allowing our mind, instead of constantly worrying about things to come, ruminating over things that have happened and passing self-judgment and self-criticism, then instead we're turning the attention of our mind to the current moment and the current physical world that's around us. So things like, what can we see? What can we hear? What do we feel in our body? And that is really effective at turning off that stress response. Other ideas for that can be journaling, actually getting all those thoughts out of our mind and onto paper and forming those sentences and trying to describe those things can be really helpful. Things that get us into flow states. So that's when you're doing something and you just become completely immersed in it. So you lose track of time and you're just completely involved in it. So this can be different for different people. For some, it might be going and spending time in nature. It might be doing art. It might be exercising. Anything like that that you've noticed before, that you get into that kind of frame of mind where you lose yourself and lose track of time, is the kind of thing to just see if you can fit that in a bit more in life and do that more often. And so relationships is another one. Sometimes that can have a function of debriefing. So is there somebody that you can talk to and actually just offload and share some of those struggles that you've been having, or just people you can hang out with and have fun with and engage with, and being so engaged in those relationships that you maybe don't necessarily forget about your worries, but are able to sort of set them aside a little bit and get a bit of distance from them while you're engaging with the people around you. Assessing your surroundings can also be really helpful. So I mentioned clutter earlier, and for a lot of people that can make a really big difference, but it might be other aspects of what kind of physical environment you're in as well. And you're just taking note of what makes you feel more stressed and what makes you feel more calm, and are there ways that you can rearrange things around you to make it a more calm environment that helps that tend and befriend response to activate. And then there are some physical things that you can do. So things like deep breathing exercises can be really helpful. Exercise can have really good immediate responses, but also longer term responses as well. So being able to do that regularly is really helpful. And looking after your nutrition as well, making sure that your body has all that it needs, all those nutrients that it needs for its immune system and for its brain function, and everything to be working really well. But the first thing, before all those things, the first thing you need to do is increase that awareness of when you're stressed. And then you can identify what causes those times of stress and experiment with strategies that actually relieve that stress. So before you go changing anything, I want you to first look at how stressed you are right now. There's a link in the comments of the video, and that'll take you to a stress questionnaire. So go through that and just get an idea of how much stress is affecting you at the moment, how bad it is. And then over the next few days, keep a close eye on when that stress arises and what the triggers seem to be for that. And you want to be particularly watching out for any kind of common themes that emerge with that, so that you know where to direct your attentions when you're experimenting with those strategies to deal with it. So head on over now and do the quiz, and I'll talk to you again soon.